Welcome to another edition of the DMVDaily Radio Show. Sorry we are late today, but better late than never. And we have some very distinguished guests with us that I'll get to later. But I'm your host, Mark McLaurin. Hassan is playing slick today. But I'm joined by two great guests as we set out to discuss a very serious issue in our community. But before we get started, I need to let you know that we're coming to you live from our new studios located in the historic Charles Village neighborhood, 2421 Maryland Avenue, and live streamed exclusively from DMV Daily News and on our social media pages on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube at DMV Daily News. This program is brought to you by our wonderful sponsors such as Politicom Strategic Solutions, successfully helping candidates get elected since the 1970s. Politicom has mastered the art of political communications and become Maryland's premier campaign consulting firm. If you are seeking elected office, you would make it your business to be in contact with them today at 240-242-7505. This show is also brought to you by that stellar legal dream team known as the Bates & Garcia Law Firm, specializing in criminal defense, real estate, and bodily injury cases. Bates & Garcia is Maryland's legal dream team. Contact them today for your free consultation at 410-814-4600. I don't know if it's going to be free by the time you get there, but right now the consultation is free. And last but certainly not least, the show is brought to you by that Powerhouse Union, the largest education local in the entire state of Maryland, SEIU 500, who wants you to know that Together We Rise is not just a slogan, but rather represents a blueprint for the future of the union movement. Visit them today at www.seiu500.org. Lastly, if you want to join in on today's conversation, you can call in or even text your question or comment to the studio phone line. That studio phone line is 410-819-2370. That's 410-819-2370. Or if you're watching us on our Facebook Live page at DMV Daily News, post your question or comment on our timeline, and our producer will make sure that we see it and respond accordingly. So we're going to get started. I want to preface this by saying this is going to be a much shorter edition of the DMV Daily News. We're only going to do 30 minutes today, but it's the first part of a very important conversation that we here at DMV Daily News felt like we needed to have with our family, with the community. And so rather than give this particular conversation short shrift, we're going to break it up into two segments. And so tonight is the first segment, the half-hour segment, and then we'll do another probably next week. Stay tuned for scheduling on it. But I am so excited and delighted to have two guests here with me. My other two co-hosts have jumped ship and deserted me here, and but they figured the diversity show gets run by the diverse person, so I'll do that. I don't feel tokenized at all. Nope. So I want to introduce first of all to my left, actually the an incredible woman in her own right, but she's also happens to be the wife of the. I know Hassan gets in trouble because he describes Maya Cummings as Elijah's wife. I'm not going to do that. Okay, what I'm going to do is say Dr. Lana Bates is here. I'll let her introduce herself, but she is an amazing person who has worked in education and on diversity issues, and she's going to be here to discuss kind of the issues around young people and in diverse communities. Specifically, let's be clear, we've been kind of using a euphemism of diversity, but we really want to zone in on LGBTQ community and the LGBTQ community's relationship with the larger community. And so we have Dr. Bates here, and also on my left and on my right is Shane Bryan, who is a neighborhood activist, a community activist. If you have been out in Baltimore at anything important, chances are you have seen him representing his community. And so he was kind enough to join us here tonight. And so I want to open up this conversation and start with, of course, ladies first. Dr. Bates, thank you for coming on.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So I'll let you kind of open up. If you could talk to us, some of the things that that I don't think people really understand are the issues, especially oftentimes in communities of color, that young people who are LGBTQ or questioning, especially, quite frankly, the transgender community. I mean, it's got to be so hard to be, 12 or 13 or 14 years old and really know that the gender assigned you at birth is not who you are. And so if you could talk a little bit about kind of the special challenges that represents and the need for real understanding and compassion and empathy.
Sure. I can talk about it based off of the knowledge that I have. I think that particularly for transgender youth and the transgender population, we still are coming into understanding more about the needs and really raising the awareness around this community. And so this idea of being born, feeling like you're being born in the wrong body, feeling like, I'm sorry, they're adjusting my mic. This is my very first time here doing this.
It doesn't look like it.
It is something that, you can only imagine, if this is not your experience, how that must feel. I know that the data is showing us and telling us that for transgender youth in particular, that they feel like they are not in the body that they belong in as early as 2 or 3 or 4 years old. So, and it's something that's pervasive, and that's part of the diagnosis around, when pediatricians and when doctors are working with transgender youth, they talk about the pervasiveness of it. So it's not just something that, today I feel, I want to put on a dress, tomorrow I might want to put on the shorts and go play with the boys, but it's something that's constantly occurring, and something that's occurred are the feelings that they've had early on. So knowing that by the time that most of them maybe even get to the point where they have the language and maybe kind of the consciousness around understanding that not everyone feels like they feel, that there's a difference between how people see them and how they feel inside. Mm-hmm. They've been experiencing that kind of dissonance. We call that cognitive dissonance for a while. So when they do, have the bravery to kind of come out or start even talking about their experience, it's something that they've been dealing with a while. And so that is another kind of barriers, because when they start to talk about that, the people that they're talking about it to, usually that's a big hit for them. So they have to kind of go through that whole process again of explaining. And then a lot of times the people that they're explaining it to are just totally not aware. They don't understand. So they're processing other people's feelings along with their own feelings, which is extremely difficult. And this is not even at the point yet where they have been able to decide that they can, have the hormone therapy, talking with doctors about how they can start to change their body to make it match how they feel. So, that process hasn't even started yet when they're, talking about coming out with their family and friends. And then there's the other outer layer of just society, all the things that they have kind of swallowed, all the microaggressions that they've experienced up until that point. And then if they do get to the point where they would like to start to match their identity with how they feel, just society at large not being a place where that's a comfortable, easy process. So there's so many layers to it. We are finding that kids in schools at an earlier age are starting to question who they are, and question how they've been assigned as far as their pronouns. So it's definitely something in the educational system that we have to catch up. Because we have the kids now. It's not about an if, but a when. Oh, I'm sorry, not about a when, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Not about a future, but now. We have to catch up, and we are lagging behind. And really the kids are the ones that seem to be, they're suffering. And as adults, we're lagging behind with understanding that.
Yeah, I think, and what can be so disheartening oftentimes, especially, I'm going to speak, especially in the African American community and communities of color, like, kids who are transgender or gay or lesbian, and, something I really never experienced, but what I've observed, like even on social media, is that, almost like a kid who is transgender or is transitioning, it's almost like in the black community treated as a discipline issue. You know what I mean? Like, somebody needs to whoop that boy's behind. You know, somebody needs to get that girl in a dress and sit her down somewhere. You know what I mean? Like that kind of, so it's beyond not even not accepting, but it's also like there's like an undercurrent of a lot of violence in that. And I can tell you as someone that is in the black LGBT community, and I was raised in a very supportive family, and I didn't really, I had a daughter really young. I didn't come out until I was 21 or 22. So I didn't really experience a lot of the adolescent angst around sexual orientation. But what I will say is that in my adult life, I've seen the consequences of kids that grew up with no support from home because of how gay they were. We're talking about, from HIV and AIDS to depression to suicide to drug abuse to alcoholism to, I can go down the list. They're disproportionately impacted in these communities because these are kids who were subject to the school that, if you're too much of a sissy, what happened is your father, your uncle needs to beat your behind. And that's the old school of thinking. I want to turn now to Shane Bryan. And Shane, I'm so glad you're here. I want to own the fact that one of the impetuses for this show was that maybe 3 weeks ago to a month ago, we had a show where we talked about the issue that the mayor had included the LGBT community as a community that would be that would benefit from kind of the set aside program that black folks had and that women-owned businesses had and that Latino businesses had, and basically the LGBT community was brought into the fold. And there was a lot of backlash from the African American community given voice to by one of my co-hosts that really said, all kinds of questions like, well, how do we know if somebody is gay? And, maybe they're faking gay to get, into this program. And all of these things were brought up. And what I was trying to explain to the community and to my co-host, quite frankly, is that argumentation is really rooted in homophobia. Whether you want to own it or not, you're not comfortable with LGBT folks. So you say, I have no issue with LGBT folks being included in these minority business enterprise program. My only fear is that what if people pretend to be gay and they're somehow getting some benefit and it's not fair because they're not really gay? How are we going to prove it? Well, quite frankly, there are a lot of people that I can't tell their ethnicity by looking at them, not all the time. And there are all kinds of other things. But so this show was really brought to the fore because by my co-host expressing what he felt were legitimate concerns, he unearthed a really ugly strain of homophobia. People were calling in and shouting Bible verses and Adam and Eve and Adam and Steve and all this madness. And, so Shane, I'm sure, as I was really kind of a little put off by that, and he felt in many respects that we had let that go on too long, and that there really needed to be a conversation. And so, to his credit, my co-host Ivan got together with Shane and invited him on because it's really important. We are a show that stands for diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, but we're also always about respect. And so, no more than we're going to let, a Nazi come on and scream at Jewish people. We are not going to let anybody come on and scream at gay people about who they are. But I want to turn it over to Shane. Thank you so much for being here, Shane, and I'm looking forward to the fuller conversation. But if you could start off kind of telling a little bit about yourself and what brings you here. Yeah,
most definitely. So thank you all for inviting me on. It's been a pleasure to get to know Dr. Bates through our conversations to prep for the show today. So that's definitely a highlight as well. But I am a gay man married to a black man from Baltimore, and there's a lot going on. I grew up in South Dakota, so I also did not come out to the world as gay, but I really didn't come out to myself as gay. I was in denial and really was trying to work through what that meant growing up, and then also trying to come to accept that was who I was. And so about 22, 23, I think, is when I got to that space where I accepted that and started to really understand what that meant, who I can become, and who, and also realizing that part of me doesn't define the things that I do. So part of being involved in community, working with community to empower others is something that I've always been passionate about, and it's something that I still do to this day, either be it community organizations, through professional work. But one thing I am particularly interested in is the intersectionality of our identities, and so I am a white man. I think that might be obvious if you're watching the Facebook live stream.
But how do we know you're gay?
But yeah. So, but I think that first and foremost, I have to own the privilege that I have as a white man. And I have to recognize that regardless of the space that I occupy, there is going to be that level of privilege just based off of who I am and what this country has set up and focused on. And so I try to use my voice, even though I am a white gay man. I still try to use my voice to amplify the issues that other communities are facing, be it either the Black LGBT community or communities that haven't been provided resources, that year after year, decades, generations that have been oppressed, either be it here in Baltimore or in communities back in my home state in South Dakota. So I think that we have to be more aware, and that can come through education. It can come through just getting to know other people, hearing people's walks of life. But we have to be willing to have those conversations, be it they're talking about race, because people are always afraid to have those conversations, or talking about being gay, the trans community, the lesbian community. We have to be able to talk about these things more openly and freely.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. And there is a unique duality to being, speaking for myself, in the Black gay community, because I can't decide what annoys me more: homophobic Black folks or racist white folks, even racist white gay folks. Like, there are all these conversations that happen about Black versus gay that completely ignores that there's a whole community of Black gay folks. And so it's frustrating for me that on one hand, Black folks kind of expect you to swallow your gayness in the perpetuation of, strong race and strong Black man and strong unity. And to the extent that you're gay, you're kind of going off the reservation and you're not loyal to the race, when, quite frankly, the history in this community is that Black gay men have stood in and stood up for our families when they were falling apart as a result of things that our straight brothers and sisters were getting involved in. When kids needed raising because mom had developed a drug problem and dad had gone to jail, it was gay Uncle Jim, that had stepped in and taking care of the parents and taking care of the family. So this idea in the Black community that somehow Black gay men and Black gay women represent some kind of threat to the larger community is absolutely ridiculous. You can go through any neighborhood and you can see that oftentimes it's the Black LGBT community that serves as the backbone of a lot of these fragile families. Not because they're inherently better people, but because by and large, oftentimes, Black gay men, especially if they've been, gay all along, they probably have, more of an ability to be helpful. They don't normally have families of their own and children of their own. So when mama gets sick or niece or nephew needs to be taken in, they're the ones best positioned to do so. And so there's that on that hand. And then you look at the white gay community who kind of, rolls their eyes sometimes at Black folks. But I go back to Stonewall and say, it was Black women and Black trans women who finally, the white gay folks have been getting kicked around by the white police in Greenwich Village at the Stonewall Inn for years and years and years. It was Black women who said, now tonight is the last night that you're going to kick my ass. And so,
and for folks who don't know, Stonewall is when where Pride came from for the LGBT the gay rights movement came from a Black woman punching a cop because she just had enough of it, and that's where the riots broke out in 1969. and where we celebrate Pride to this day comes from that. The black women standing up for their rights, and we really see it. We were talking earlier. The black community, the black gay community in Baltimore is huge. Mm-hmm. It's a really big community. They have this weekend. They have one of their the annual ball celebrations. So hundreds of folks from all over the country, honestly, actually, will come to Baltimore to celebrate this, and no one talks about it. Right. If you're not inside that community, it ain't being spoken to. And to touch on what Mark was saying with the white community, the gay white community, particularly gay white men, that they still have a problem owning that privilege. Mm-hmm. So they come into these spaces and they take over the conversation. And so a lot of people don't realize the history of the gay pride movement or the gay rights movement, and they think it is the white guys that came in and they saved the day when they had nothing to do with it. I mean, they did, but these women were the ones that started it. And even the AIDS epidemic, lesbians are the backbone of supporting the men who are going through everything that was happening during the AIDS epidemic. And we don't recognize or talk about that as much. It usually goes, all the movies are about the white guys, the white boys that were dealing with
the white
things.
savior theme and narrative is huge and alive and well. And I think the thing also that I'm in tune to with this idea of intersectionality and the way privilege overlays it is that the more identities that you own that are marginalized, the higher the risk that your quality of life will be severely negatively impacted. Mm-hmm. So we're not just talking about, recognition and acknowledgement of the strength and power that you have, but these layers, if you are Black, if you are poor, if you are gay, if you, if you're a woman, all these different layers that you have, the more that they are marginalized in society, the more your body reacts to it in a negative way. You have a higher risk of depression, a higher risk of heart disease, a higher risk of cancer. Our babies are being born with lower birth weight, are dying at a higher rate from SIDS, and just kind of, no other explanation outside the fact that they were born Black. I mean, it's the psychological and physiological effects of being in a marginalized role or having a marginalized identity. And when you layer on multiple layers of marginalized identity, it's like, being underwater with rocks in your pockets. You have to fight so much harder. And so when we talk about this idea of how do we, how as a community do we start to heal from this or work together, conversations are important. I always take the approach of empathy. I take the approach of understanding that we all have levels of privilege in some form, and we all have levels of marginalization in some form. And some of us have, we can tick the side of marginalization, marginalized identities that might be more ticks than, than the privileged side of it. But this idea that when you're walking in spaces and you are constantly fighting against the things that you see and the things that you perceive and just feel at a gut level that serve to disenfranchise you, that serve to disvalue you, invalidate you, it takes a toll on your body. And so there's real consequences to living in a racialized America, living in a society that not just discounts you on the surface, but there are actual things in place that you deal with every day that's giving you the message that you are less than. It's real consequences to that. And so, helping us understand the cost of living in marginalized identities, not to victimize anybody, because we talk about how strong, even though you have all these forces around you, how strong we are and how we can lift ourselves and our family and our communities up. Mm-hmm. But that needs to be recognized, is that there's a toll that we're taking on our bodies, on our babies, in our community. So it's not just what you see on the surface, but it's a real toll that's being paid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Underwater with rocks in your pocket. I'm going to use that, Doctor. I like that. But it really is a good illustration for folks that don't, that are having trouble imagining. That really is what it is. You're kind of fighting to stay above water. But if you are a kid that feels like they were born in the wrong body, or if you are a kid that feels like that they are romantically attracted to someone that they're not supposed to be romantically attracted to, an adolescent is fighting to keep his head above water anyway, as a normal kid. Those rocks in your pocket are a really vivid analogy. I think, and I'm hopeful that it makes it easier for people to understand. Another issue that presents itself, especially in the African American community, in addition to the transgender community, is like among Black gay men, there's all this kind of machismo aspect to, like, if you're gay, you're not really going to be a real man. And then the idea of this, down low brother that was introduced, 20 years, which set back relations between Black gay men and Black women, honestly, for 20 years. Because what often comes off between those conversations is, dishonesty it gets kind of equated in homophobic ways, and quite frankly, some of the reaction to that among Black gay men back towards women is very misogynist. And so I say all the time that because I'm a Black gay man does not give me any special empathy card or understanding card for Black women. It's my responsibility to understand that I'm the father of a Black girl, and I'm the son of a Black woman, and I'm the grandson of Black women. And, it's my responsibility to understand and to not be a misogynist. And like with Black women, with all they've endured, it's their responsibility to understand that they shouldn't be homophobic. These are relations that need to come together. And those are, conversations that often happen in the Black community, both around Black gay men, around lesbian women, around transgendered folks, is so it's so blame seeking or sensationalized. Like there are families like Shane's husband Jay that does nothing more interesting than get up at 3:30 in the morning and go to the gym. He's married to Shane. You know what I mean? Like
that's very interesting.
Yes, exactly.
It's really early.
Yeah, yes. That's why it's interesting.
Right. So he is a freak in that way, but he's not a freak in the way of we conduct our normal lives. He's not sneaking around trying to steal your husband, girl. You know what I mean? Like there's a whole conversation that I think gets sensationalized in communities in ways that maybe even as older people we can handle it a lot more, but as a young person looking up and seeing that, he like a young gay boy gets to feel like I'm either going to be some outcast trying to steal some woman's man, or I've got to be completely in the closet and nobody can know about anything, which leads to me dating women and being dishonest with women. And so I guess my challenge is, how do we have these conversations in communities in ways that are not limiting? Like, I don't want anyone that feels, something not to be able to say something, but how to have these conversations. And I'm hoping, Dr. Bates, you can help us with this.
So I have the answer,
yes.
right? No, I don't.
I'm ready. I'm writing it down.
No, I think, so as you were talking, the idea of internalized oppression comes to mind. Internalized oppression is real. I think particularly for the Black community, we are still struggling to identify who we are in the midst of our history, and in the midst of things that are still happening today. We are unique in the sense that we're one of the few communities that have had our identity stripped away from us so completely, and that we've had to fight to identify ourselves in the midst of the fire. And so this idea of masculinity and femininity, we've kind of lost our roots around what that really means and what that really looks like, and we're trying to come to terms with how we identify ourselves as African Americans. We've internalized all of the negative stereotypes around what a Black man was in the past, what a Black woman was in the past, being sexualized, hypersexualized, Black men being hyper aggressive and hyper seeing as threatening and violent, and so this idea of this internalized oppression that we're dealing with as a community also serves to help us not be able to have true conversations with each other. And so there's a secrecy and a shame, I think, associated with a lot of this. And so that's layered over this, this whole piece of us trying to figure out who we are as a community to begin with. And so when you have that secrecy, when you have that fear, that whole down low comes around, the whole idea of, I have to keep this lifestyle to myself. and not share it with others because I've been given the message that it's not normal, it's not healthy, it's not appropriate. Not to say that's all of the reason for the download. There are some, I think, brothers out there that just like the idea of, being able to do what they want to do.
Right.
But I think a good portion of it is because, as you two mentioned, it took you a while for you to even be able to come out to yourselves, let alone to someone outside. And so the idea of secrecy and shame, I think, helps contribute to people not being true to themselves and then true to the ones that they claim to love.
I know we have a caller. I just wanted to add to what Dr. Bates was just saying. Also, that secrecy prevents a lot of people from getting medical and clinical assistance that they definitely need. So we see the rate of HIV transmission in the Black community, 4 times or even more higher than in the white community. And you see the white community getting access to things like PrEP and other things that can prevent the transmission of HIV when either the physicians aren't willing to talk about it, or as a patient, you aren't willing to disclose that to your provider.
Along with the quality of care that we see in the different neighborhoods, that adds to the problem.
So we have a caller on the line, but I have no idea how to... Caller? It's ringing. Should it be ringing?
Are we calling him or her?
No, I don't think so. We have a caller.
Hi.
Welcome on the
Hello.
air. Hi, who's this?
This is Lisa Mills.
Hey, Lisa Mills. Welcome. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Lisa Bill.
Hi, Shane. And hi, Miss Beautiful Lana Bates. How are you? I miss you so much. Look, I think this show is really so important because it's the secrecy that folks hold in that hurts them the most. And I just feel like with me, I'm HIV positive, and I've been HIV positive since 1991. And when you have to hold these secrets in, they hurt so much. We as a society just need to get to the point where we judge people on our strengths, our own God-given strengths. All this secrecy, holding in this, being afraid to tell people this and being afraid to tell people that, that's what hinders us. Me, I proudly hop into a room on my one leg and I announce gladly, look, I'm HIV positive, you're going to either accept me, and I'm very masculine, even though I don't consider myself gay. I'm very masculine because I'm loud and aggressive. But I thank you, Lana, for coming on the show. And it's just another chance for me to just stand up and proudly say who I am and have no fear of the consequences.
Amen,
and
sis.
so, Shane, thank you for coming. Mark, I love you with
love
your
you
funny
more.
self. And Lana, girl, you do the TV screen good. You're looking good, girl. Bye-bye.
Thank you for calling,
Thank
Lisa.
you for calling. And I think she brings up a really good point. So a lot of folks assume that HIV is a gay disease, the gay cancer, whatever it used to be called. And, truthfully, there are a lot of folks living with that disease right now, and you can live so long with it. It isn't a death sentence any longer.
It's definitely changed. I mean, even when I was growing up, it was definitely seen as that, disease that you didn't want to be around someone. If they sneezed on you or, it was so much fear around it. And definitely, I see commercials now where it's like, yeah, I take PrEP and I live my life and I'm doing good. And so that I'm glad to see that has changed. It's still an epidemic that I feel, there's so many other epidemics that we should be able to get rid of.
Well, and we don't, because it's we don't know how to work with our seniors who are now living with HIV.
Yes,
how do we provide the care for
senior
them?
Cares, they are really doing something. I'm like, what? The rise in HIV in like senior homes, and I don't know how that's happening, but it's happening.
You sitting around all day watching TV, you get a little itchy when scratching. They're not always careful up in them future cares. I see you future cares saying, "Damn, y'all be hopping up in there, don't you?"
But then that's a generation I think grew up feeling so afraid of AIDS and not being educated about it and not knowing how to prevent, as well as how to take care of yourself if you do indeed, contract it.
So it's breaking my heart. I think we only have about a minute left, which is why we definitely have to do part 2 of this, because we have to have these whole other conversations. I wanted to get to Shane's kind of his reactions to hearing the show. We didn't get to that. I definitely want to talk much more with Dr. Bates about especially about young people, but more importantly about how we can facilitate a dialogue between black gay men and black heterosexual women, and how we finally, I've always said, to my straight girlfriends that always ask me, how do I know if my man is gay? How do I know if he messes around? And I tell them all the time, if you are with a man, like, I don't like Brussels sprouts, but I don't talk about Brussels sprouts a lot. If you are with a man that takes every opportunity, every 10 minutes, to talk about how he does not like gay men, he does not like faggots, he does not get down, he does not, me think he doth protest too much. Run, girl, put on your track shoes and run, because there's a reason why. And what happens, though, is that in black communities, oftentimes railing against gay men by black men is viewed as, that's a real man. He don't play that at all. He'll punch somebody in their face if they blink because they got something in their eye. You know what I mean? That's seen as something to be honored and to be attracted to. But at the end of the day, that's how you wind up with a DL brother, sis. That's how you wind up with a DL brother. So I think
really quick, Mark. I know Lana has to go, but can Shane stay for a little bit? Is it possible? Do you have to go as well?
Yeah, I have to go. But and I know Baby Girl has a party she has to get to at 7:00.
Well, I understand Lana had to go, but I was hoping that maybe you and Shane could have maybe a few more minutes.
No. But what I will guarantee you is that this is only like the first third of a 2-hour conversation that we're going to have about this, because I'm even more excited after hearing from Dr. Bates and hearing from you, Shane. I think that we can have some really good conversations, and hopefully we can get some folks on the line and get some real dialogue going. So we're going to end it here for tonight, but I will be working with the schedulers for Dr. Bates and for Dr. Bryan, and we are going to get another show together. I want to say first, thank you so much, Lana, Dr. Bates, for being here, and Shane, as always, you have been a stalwart supporter of our show from the first day. And obviously, Lana, you've been a stalwart supporter of our show from the first day, because you let him out to play 4 or 5 nights a week. And I know he's got other things at home. And so, Shane gives us his eyes. Lana gives us her husband. Okay. So I'm going to honor her sacrifice. But honestly, I'm very grateful to both of you, and we'll sign out. Good night, everyone. And on behalf of Ivan, free Keith Davis.
If you're a YouTuber, you're probably using this. Quality songs, all pre-checked for monetization. Only $1.99 a year.